Majority of times when we hear about Africa's participation in global development matters, we're told that Africa has a lot of potential. However, untapped potential remains exactly that, potential. The first satellite was launched into space in 1957. Since, so many countries have come out in a race that has seen thousands of satellites get launched into space. However, Africa still lags behind in this respect, mainly because of constraints in funding and investment in space. I want to suggest a strategic framework for the creation of a national space identity, and my country of interest is Kenya. Kenya is one of Africa's largest economies and has a GDP of close to $120 billion. Kenya launched her first satellite into space in 1970, over half a century ago. However, very little has been achieved. Off the coast of Kenya in Malindi, Kenya has a launch platform called the San Marcos Space Station, or nowadays the Luigi Broglio, that is owned by Italy. Kenya also has a national space agency. However, very little has happened in the way of launching to space in the country. In 2023, Kenya launched its first operational Earth observation satellite called Cypher-1, but it was launched all the way in the United States of America aboard a rocket owned by Elon Musk's SpaceX. It is predicted that the space economy will be worth much more than it is right now in the near future, and Kenya needs to invest more in space to make sure that it does not lose out on what's about to come. One way of doing this is having a dedicated long-term funding line that will make sure that all space-related activities are planned for in advance and funded in advance. Kenya should also seek to attract foreign direct investments that benefit the space industry through creation of a favorable regulatory environment and offering incentives to foreign space companies that can then invest in the local market. The country can also make use of the 6 components of a wealth economy, that is the natural, human, knowledge, physical, social, institution, and capital elements, as noted below. For the natural component, Kenya is strategically placed along the equatorial belt, making it an ideal country for launch of satellites, which tells you that Kenya should not be having its satellites launched in the United States of America. The country should also have dedicated funding directed towards development of essential space infrastructure, including satellite ground stations, research laboratories, and data processing centers, and also have the technologies that support these infrastructures. The country already boasts a lot of institutions that offer education on space sciences, and it could still seek collaboration from established agencies and institutions from across the globe to ensure that it keeps on developing its human capacity. Kenya should also seek to have additional funding for its space initiative from international organizations that are very interested in space, such as the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs and the Africa Development Bank, which understand the advantages of space foray and which advocate for use of space for the benefit of all. The country should also support and empower its own space startups by offering tax breaks and any other interventions that make them able to scale up and that make them able to survive amid a competitive environment for the benefit of the country's space ecosystem. It should also be focused on establishment of large-scale space projects through collaborations with regional powers to ensure that it can leverage economies of scale. This means that less will be used to achieve more. But little can be achieved without proper public engagement. Creation of public awareness, including starting with pupils in junior school levels, where they can grow up understanding the importance of the country's engagement and participation in space activities, will be very important. These children and their parents can understand the basics of space and the importance of the country spending a lot on space exploration. And it will create a mass of cultured, well-trained citizens that understand the benefits of every coin that goes in space and every effort that's made to ensure that Kenya's space ecosystem remains solidly backed up. The country should also relook its national space policy to make sure there is a proper definition of the regulatory measures, legal frameworks, and strategic goals. Doing all this, Kenya will create a national space framework that is globally competitive, that is inclusive, and that is very, very sustainable.